Welcome everyone to today's China and the World Forum, the US and China, 21st Century Opportunities and Challenges, brought to you by World Scientific Publishing. I am Si-En, your MC for today. Thank you for joining us in today's dialogue. This forum is organized by World Scientific's journal, China and the World, Ancient and Modern Silk Road, to promote communication and exchange on China and BRI-related themes. The China and the World Journal is pleased to announce that its latest issue can be freely accessed by creating an account with World Scientific. Please visit the journal's website in the chat box for more information. Just a few housekeeping notes before we start. You are most welcome to leave your cameras on, but please keep your mics muted while the forum is ongoing. There will be a Q&A session after the talk, so please feel free to post your questions in the chat at any time. After posting your question in the chat, you may be invited to unmute yourself and read it out during the Q&A session if you are comfortable doing so. Also, this webinar will be recorded and posted online. Today, we are very pleased to have with us our special guest, founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization, Dr. Huiyao Henry Wang. Not only is he a counselor to the State Council of China, but also vice chairman of the China Association for International Economic Cooperation under the Ministry of Commerce. He also serves as professor and dean of the Institute of Development at Southwestern University of Finance and Economics in China, to name only a few of his appointments. Our first co-moderator for this event will be Professor Da Xuanfeng, honorary dean of Hainan University Belt and Road Research Institute and Chief Advisor of the China Silk Road I-Valley Research Institute. Our second co-moderator is Professor Ziqun Zhu, Professor and Chair of the International Relations Department at Bucknell University, USA. He is also a member of the National Committee on United States-China Relations. Professor Wang, Professor Feng, and Professor Zhu are executive editors for the China and the World Journal. I will now hand over the time to Professor Feng to say a few words of introduction for the journal.
Good morning or good evening, ladies and gentlemen from all corners of the world. Welcome to this webinar on a subject that I think that we have to agree it's almost changing daily as the relationship between the United States and China continues to evolve, as some would say, deteriorate. The journal it started about 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, and this particular journal came out of Asia, especially at the time where we wanted to have an opportunity, a platform for people to voice their opinions, concerns, and ideas about China in the 21st century. And we wanted to do it especially in English language so that it's communicable to nearly everyone on earth. I'm very excited that my two colleagues today, Henry Wang and Professor Zhu, are also co-editors of this journal. We welcome people to send in your articles for consideration. This is a fast-growing journal. At this point, let me hand over the screen to Henry, who will begin the discussion of today's topic. Henry, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Feng, and also Professor Zhu, and also Citoyenne, and also all the distinguished guests and audience. Good evening or good morning, depending where you are. So this is really fascinating. We're talking about China and the world in the 21st century, opportunities and the challenges. But I actually like to maybe to start with to share some of the observation I have. You know, I have several points to really kick off this dialogue. The first is China and US is under a period of readjustment So next month marks the 50 years of an anniversary of Nixon's historic visit to China and signing of Shanghai Communique, which was a significant step towards normalization of Sino-American relations. And that actually paved the way for the diplomatic ties between China and the US since 1979. So since then, arguably since the end of the probably Clinton administration, the US-China relation have been actually deteriorating and reached its lowest point during the Trump years. Although many have argued no significant changes in the US-China relation has been seen since the Biden took office, there are clear signs the relationship entered a period of readjustment. I talked to Joseph Nye actually not long ago. He was talking about cooperative rivalry. And actually it's very difficult for Biden to make any drastic moves on China as he locked in this situation with Democrats for any thin majority has. So I think that US State Secretary of State famously used the 3C to describe US policy on China. The relationship will be competitive and also cooperative and also advisory, so that the three C's that he was talking about. I think that, we had recently President Xi and Biden phone call in November, which actually trying to stabilize the relationship, but it hasn't really, to the satisfaction that we have. So President Biden still underscored the US remains committed to China policy, but he's actually, we see that there's a lot of activities going on Taiwan and many, South China Sea. So the phase one deal also, we have come to the end, but we still haven't seen the tariff being released. There's a lot of things going on. So this, period of adjustment that we're going to see for a long time. I think now we're also getting into the second point is that we're getting the competition, cooperative competition. That's probably something we need to also pay attention to because we have a lot of things to cooperate. Climate change, pandemic, cybersecurity and all those things that we really have to work together. And on the climate change, the US and China are two largest CO2 emitters. And we really have to work together, and so that to avoid the catastrophe. And also, we see the climate change is really deteriorating. We see that pandemic is really ramping still, and it's unfortunate that we haven't really worked together. So cooperation is really the cornerstone for US and China. We have to really work on that. And China is also now with the clean coal energy. With clean energy technology, with the largest producer of solar power, largest producer of hydropower, and of course the clean vehicle as well. So there's many things that I think US-China can work together. But also I think that there's infrastructure too. We can really US and China can cooperate. President Biden has proposed this Build Back Better world. And the EU has proposed the EU Gateway, and China has launched this Belt and Road Initiative 8 years ago. So I think this is the biggest common denominator of China-US relations, so that we can really work on that. And also we see that China is joining the CPTPP, which is designed by the US. So there's, on those trade issues that maybe we should work together. And of course, there's also RCEP is already getting effective on January 1st this year. So I think there's a lot of area we should work together. Particularly, I think the biggest cooperating area probably is the infrastructure. That's the least controversial. Everybody is working on that. Everybody realizes that. And also, I think the world needs actually the infrastructure to drive the world for the next half a century. And why not, China has AIB and World Bank and Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, Latin American Development, all those development banks should really work together. So I think, that really symbolizes the area we can collaborate. And finally, I'd like to talk about is the way that we have to really recognize both countries in terms of the values and the system. I'm quite pleased to see President Biden actually, he announced that troops withdraw from Afghanistan. He's saying basically he does not seek nation building anymore, or so that maybe not impose the model to other countries. So we see China is a long, Confucius society with Asian values and really peaceful. And China has a lot of, its own meritocracy, and now with the modern technology, they have a, technology democracy, and also market democracy, where to go, what to buy are really the choice of the people. So I think this, the civilization are rich and diverse, and so is democracy. Democracy is not mass-produced within a uniform model or configuration of countries around the world. So I think that we have to really, recognize the existence of different culture, different system, and so that maybe we should really work together. And I think Chinese historical tradition and the status quo has actually paved the way, that democracy and itself that works actually in China in its own system, and then that is really how they can by selecting and by picking the people. So that really how it works. So finally, I'd like to say that U.S. and China are really at the crossroads. I mean, they are big countries. We should avoid the Huiyao trap, but also we should avoid the Hindenburg trap, so that we can't leave the world vacant without any basically a responsible state really to safeguard the multilateralism, the system that we've been get used to for the last seven and a half decades. But I think we need really improve on that. We need to really upgrade on that. We need to work on that. So I think that we are already living a very challenging world, and the U.S. and China has to work together. There's enormous opportunities. Of course, there's a danger, but there's also enormous opportunities for us to really work on. Fighting pandemic, building up the fighting the climate change, building up a better world, through the infrastructure, and also have a safe cyber security, and also ensure there's no couple, there's no Cold War, and there's no tech decoupling, and those are very, very important. So I think that the topic today is really very relevant, and we really have to work together. And I can't imagine the two largest economy, and also with other important countries in the world like EU and many countries in developing world that can afford to see US and China go really, the relations really go to a bipolar world, basically decouple. So really, it's hard to imagine that. So I think that we all have all the experts here tonight, and I just want to open this dialogue, and then we can probably have more discussions to talk more. I just want to leave it there, and let's continue the dialogue.
Thank you very much, Henry. It was certainly, you have given us you painted the comprehensive development of US-China for the last, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, most comprehensively. Zuqing, do you want to follow up with questions now?
Yes. It's a really, first of all, it's a really a great pleasure to be a co-moderator. I think first of all, I want to commend you, Dr. Wang, for founding and leading the Center for China and Globalization, and promoting exchanges and dialogue among scholars, former government officials, diplomats, business people, entrepreneurs, and others from China and other countries. I think the CCG has also been involved in track 2 diplomacy. At a time when government-to-government relations are having problems, I think it's extremely important to maintain people-to-people exchanges and keep the communication channels open. So thank you, Dr. Wang, for helping promote mutual understanding between China and the world. In your opening remarks, you highlighted the difficulties between China and the United States, and also actually listed a few areas where the two countries can cooperate. Perhaps I want to, if you can, perhaps you can elaborate on the causes that have led to the current situation, the current status of the relationship between China and the United States. What are the main causes? I mean, you highlighted a few, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on both sides. But also, as a follow-up, among those areas that you think the two countries can cooperate, what is preventing them from cooperating with each other? Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Professor Zhu, for your great questions. I think the causes for what has happening is actually, as I said, this is the year of 50 years ago when Nixon visited China. The U.S. and China starting to warm up, and then for the last 5 decades, there's enormous exchanges and dialogues and trade and people-to-people exchanges going on in between the two largest, economy in the world, actually, particularly in the last decade. What I've seen is actually where it went wrong is first of all, I think that U.S. was thinking, for example, 20 years ago when China joined the WTO, that U.S. was thinking, okay, we can turn China into a U.S. or Western style kind of a model or style democracy, but that they haven't really, gradually they found that they didn't see that happening. I think that is one probably the main reason for that. That is really one of the main reasons that they were hoping China can converge, and then it turned out China, stand on its own and actually develop quite well. So that's something I think, going to take years for people to change back, because that kind of ideological differences has been embedded in people's mind, particularly in American elite, for some time. So that actually, I think, the reason number one. Number two is that China has been developing so fast, so effectively, and actually lifted 800 million people out of poverty, representing 70% of the global poverty reduction. That's enormous. So I think there is you can say admiration, there could be envy, could be jealousy, could, a human being nature. I mean, that happens. So if China is doing well and then you are different, there's also people felt that you are not right. So I think there's another reason for that. And thirdly is it's also difficult is because China has a different culture. China has a different language. It's not a Western country. It's our Oriental country. China has 5,000-year history, and the civilization never interrupted, for many years throughout history. So that is also hard to understand too. It's difficult to understand China sometimes. I think the last reason I could attribute that probably is also China needs to do more on the narrative, because I think China has done so well, but then we still yet to come up with a framework, theoretical framework to explain the success behind that, and which is also ring the bell to the people outside China. So I think that is also, China has done quite a lot of that, but still not enough. So those are probably the reasons that I think where has led to this kind of a diversion or maybe potential conflict as well. I think, and if I give another reason, finally, is the value. For example, people view democracy, people view ideology, development model, governance style, also human rights. There's a variety of different views on that. So that has led to a lot of potential, disagreement, argument, even conflict. So I think those are probably major reasons that led to this. The area I think that we can collaborate in the future. I mean, we have to. People know the pandemic. We have to collaborate. Climate change. We have to climate. And recently, also 5 states have signed this nuclear, nuclear weapon deal recently announced that they have to restrict the use of that. That is a good sign that they can collaborate. Issues like North Korea, Iran, they can collaborate. So I think, and also of course there is infrastructure they can collaborate with developing countries. So I think there's quite a few areas that still we need each other. We cannot really continue to separate. I mean, maybe just to answer in a nutshell, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think, again, you have zeroed in some of the critical reasons why the two major economic powers of the world today is showing more and more animosity, which I hope in this today's discussion, we can elaborate on some of the ways to alleviate that. Let's get to one of the hard problems, the hardest problem right now between the US and China. I think everyone would agree that it is the issue of Taiwan. Undoubtedly, in the last month, 2 or 3, Taiwan has emerged or re-emerged as a potentially most explosive issue between the two countries. As we know, the United States Congress has passed several new bills, and also the administration, even under Biden now, has significantly upgraded the so-called unofficial relations with Taiwan. In sort of playing around with the words of one China policy, making people very uncomfortable. So in your view, Henry, how dangerous is the Taiwan Straits today? Why are the tensions so high there from the US point of view and from the Chinese point of view? And what do you think are the prospects of peaceful unifications or reunifications between Taiwan and the mainland? And quite recently, I think President Xi Jinping, once again in his recent comments, made it very clear that reunification is a definite goal for all Chinese people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Fong. Actually, you are right. I mean, Taiwan is probably the hottest spot. I mean, the most sensitive spot also in the Sino-US relations. I think that if this Taiwan issue is not handled properly or carefully, it could ruin everything. So it's really very, very dangerous and very, very explosive if we are not careful. So what I think, what has led to the situation is that because there is the DPK, the Taiwan Democratic Party, China, really, they actually wants to seek independence somehow. There's a tendency for that, because I see actually during the KMT time, when Ma Ying-jeou and Lian Zhan, when they were running the Taiwan, there was already a lot of convergence with mainland China. Taiwan is the largest, in terms of the trade surplus with the mainland, has enjoyed one of the largest trade surplus, and also, the people-to-people movement across the strait is enormous, with millions of mainland travel to Taiwan and thousands of students from mainland to study in Taiwan, and vice versa. There's 2 million Taiwanese people working in mainland. So I see the natural integration. But I think the problem is now, when Biden administration come into power, that really things starting to change. And of course, we also have the Hong Kong, unrest. Basically, that also stir up the situation in Taiwan as well. For example, I mean, during the first term of President Tsai Ing-wen there, the midterm election the KMT has, with many seats, and published, China almost lost, could if it continues to lose the presidential election, if not for the Hong Kong unrest. So I think this Hong Kong situation has something to do with Taiwan as well. But now, actually, Hong Kong is stabilized. Hong Kong is, is back to normal and prosperous. So I think that will help the situation in Taiwan to see, the one country, two system actually works. I mean, with some modifications, actually work, continues to work. So I think that is the reason. But again, the U.S. is sending, surprisingly sending the officials to visit Taiwan during the Trump era. There was officials, and now we have a congressman, several times visiting Taiwan, and we have a military navy, so warships gone through Taiwan, hundreds of times, and so the situation is getting really. Even China even said, there's a U.S. military personnel based in Taiwan. That's a strong violation of 3 communique of no official contact and no military based in Taiwan. So China has to react, I mean, to some extent with all those air flights and things like that. So that's, I think the situation basically was largely caused by probably the Taiwanese authorities and also the U.S. intention to keep the situation tense. So I think, this is really dangerous. I think, the issue can really be solved, I think, among the people across the street, and they are from the same culture, same ethnic, same tradition and same language. Why can't they actually solve by themselves? We don't need the foreign interference. I think, that's probably how we should avoid the dangerous spot that in the world probably.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah. So I agree with you that the problem between the mainland and Taiwan should be resolved by themselves without the foreign intervention. Let me ask another, perhaps also very sensitive, even controversial issue. That is Xinjiang. We all know that U.S. Congress and the White House are making policies and passing laws regarding Xinjiang based on what they claim to be genocide and crimes against humanity. And of course, Western media also cover the Xinjiang situation as if genocide is the fact on the ground. And of course, the Chinese government, Chinese side, has a totally different version of the story. So what is exactly going on in Xinjiang? What is exactly the situation in Xinjiang? And what can China and Chinese government do to make its voices heard in the West?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Zhu. I think that is really also one of the hot issues as well. I'm quite certain the Hong Kong situation will be stabilized. Now they have a new legislature elected, and the chief executive will be elected in the coming March. So Hong Kong will be stabilized. I think now the hottest issue now people are talking probably still is Xinjiang. But the truth of the matter is, they're talking about there's 1 million or 2 million Uyghurs are in the camps, but which is not true. There's only about 9-10 million Uyghurs. If you're talking about 2 million Uyghurs in the camp, that must be Uyghurs from every family, which is totally impossible. That's number one. Number two, I've been to Xinjiang a number of times. And everywhere you go now, it's very safe. Everything is very peaceful. Everything is prosperous. The economic growth is at higher than average of other provinces in China, and then also the tourism actually in the last several years, if not hit by pandemic, was also quite good. And also the other thing is that the people talking about genocide, but that's not really substantiated. There could be antidotes somewhere, but you don't really see a systematic anything happen in Xinjiang. So I think it was greatly exaggerated, and it's actually not true at all. And what actually happening is, if some people coming out of Xinjiang and then talk about individual situation there could be something happen to that particular individual, but it's not really as said to the massive population. That's never happened. And then, people say, oh, we're looking from a satellite, there's a lot of buildings, but buildings are empty buildings, there's nothing there. And so I think, Xinjiang is actually open for anybody going there to see. It's open to foreigners, for foreign journalists too. If, I know there are a lot of foreigners actually went there. I know there's a lot of embassy officials went there. I'm sure they sent in the report back as well. They couldn't find anything to substantiate the claims that there's a genocide in Xinjiang. So I think it's not really possible to see that. And you can grab a flight and go to Xinjiang to see it personally, as a matter of fact. And now we have a new party secretary now for Xinjiang, and he actually seeking the comments on the internet. Say, how do I, what can you make recommendation to build a better Xinjiang, and what are your suggesting recommendations sent to me? So there was calling for proposals, for the recommendations to how to do better. So I think they are very open. They, people are safe. Anywhere you go in Xinjiang, you don't worry. It's a really a great situation. So I think this pandemic is really bad, preventing many more people to come to see it. I really hope there'll be more foreign visitors to come to Xinjiang and see it, so that we can get this kind of unsubstantiated claims out of the actually the hot attention of the media.
Okay. You want to follow up, Professor Zhu?
No, we have a lot of other questions, I think, and our audience may also have questions. But I was going to ask you, Dashan, are you going to ask another question maybe about BRI or?
Maybe later. Maybe we can ask, well, I'd like to invite a very distinguished participant today. His name is Norman Pearlstein. Norm was the former editor-in-chief of Wall Street Journal as well as Los Angeles Times. He has taken the time to actually join into the discussion. Norm, are you still there? Oh, yes, you are. Would you like to ask a follow-up question or a question in general?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to join the conversation and to learn from you and your colleagues on the panel, whose perspectives are not often well publicized or understood within the U.S., certainly in recent years. I think that there are a number of questions that come to mind, but for many Americans, I think it is difficult to fully appreciate the role of Xi Jinping in China and what we've observed over the last years since his coming to power toward the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. And I would be curious as to whether Dr. Wang feels that his years are a logical and natural extension of his three predecessors, specifically Deng, Zhang, and Hu, or whether he is really either a throwback to prior times or creating a new set of beliefs and values that are in many ways different from what at least many people outside of China thought they were observing in the 2 decades, say, prior to his coming to power.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think actually China, just celebrated the centennial, last year, and the 100 years anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. So I think there is a logic, there is a tradition, there is a continuity of that CPC movement. Actually, they have founded the People's Republic. They have actually build up the infrastructure, build up the industrial system, build up the social system. So I think overall, you have to say it's quite successful, particularly in the last 4 decades, since China opened up. So I think, President Xi actually, carried the tradition of the CPC, since Mao, to continuously to Dan and to Jiang, to Hu, and until him now. And I think he's carried that tradition very well. And of course, with upgrade, with a lot of improvement, with a lot of creation and innovation. So I think basically for the last 10 years, for example, since President Xi is taking over, you see China now. There's the tremendous changes, transformations going on there. For example, the infrastructure, we're now in a much better infrastructure. China has become more active. China proposed this Belt and Road Initiative, which is a new master plan for the developing countries to really undertaking the development. China has launched this. Also, China is forming some new concept, for example, building a community with shared future. China is more supportive. China becomes second largest donor to the United Nations. China provides 10% of the budget for WTO. China is, for example, during the current pandemic fighting, China already donated 2 billion doses of vaccine to over 120 countries. China also become for example, in the last 10 years, China become the largest automobile market in the world with 25 million auto production a year. Largest clean energy vehicle in the world. Largest solar power energy in the world, and also largest wind power, hydropower. I mean, the list goes on. So I think, the reason they can do that is that they have a one strong leadership, party leadership, also with the President Xi at the core. But also, I think, there's a system, the continuity of the CPC, because the one 5-year plan after another 5-year plan after another 5-year plan, centennial plan, and another centennial plan for the People's Republic. So I think there's a logic, and with 5,000 years history, uninterrupted civilization until today. So I think there must be some logic. There must be some internal rhythm that they have to, they must be done something right. So I think, how we can really interpret by the Western countries is quite, is quite interesting as well, because China has a different system. So I think now, we're kind of, for example, the whole world now is paying attention to the infrastructure. President Biden announced 1.2 trillion infrastructure plan. European, chairman announced this 300 billion euro, Europe gateway. So now, because China already working on that 8 years ago on Belt and Road. So I think, we can have a different system, but we should work together. So I think the Chinese, China has always have a very strong central government, have a very strong leadership. And also the continuity is there. There's no lame duck. There's no changing of the guards every 3-4 years. And opposition for the opposition's sake, veto for the veto's sake. We see some problem with the Western system too. So China, of course, is not perfect. China is still improving, but still China has gradually finding its own way. For example, China already become providing 1 billion social security beneficiary. 1.3 billion people under some kind of Medicare. It's the largest Medicare system in the world now. And also with every year with 10 million people graduate from college, the largest college producers in the world. And also, lifted 800 million people out of poverty. So I think, there must be something done right for China. Otherwise, if you compare the KPI, everything China is probably doing okay. So of course, Western countries, US has its own advantage, innovation, talent, many good things. But I think we should supplement each other rather than become a rivalry. China doesn't think there's a rivalry, and so I think there's a lot of things we can learn from each other.
if I could just follow up quickly on that, how should we interpret the presumed decision that will enable President Xi to stay in power for more than 2 terms? That certainly seems like a deviation from his 3 predecessors to an outsider. And I would be grateful for any guidance you might be able to provide.
Yeah, no, I think that, I just personal observation, because for example, like German Chancellor Angela Merkel just retired. I mean, she served for 16 years. And, there's many other countries, they have longer terms. Putin has been serving many years, many terms too. So I think, for China, always in the history of China, there's always a strong leadership. We need a really strong leadership. We can't have a lame duck. we need a lot of things to really implement. That's why China is so efficient and highly effective, because we have a strong central leadership. And also, I think historically, China has always have a very strong centralized government and with strong leadership. So I think, if this is really good for the country and because even actually for the Deng Xiaoping, I think he returns the central military position for more than 2 terms, and President Jiang Zemin also maintained the military commission chair also more than 2 terms. So I mean, I think it's if things are doing well, if the leader is really doing fabulously in terms of producing economic benefit, producing social benefit, producing the great rejuvenation for the country. I mean, he probably, of course, deserves more times to do that. And I mean, people really have no argument that, I mean, internally, for example.
Well, I guess it's worth noting that in New York City, Mayor Bloomberg also wanted more than 2 terms and got a 3rd one too.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay. I like to turn the question, as suggested by Professor Zhu, on the Belt and Road Initiative of China, particularly about the Belt and Road Initiative with respect to Southeast Asia. As you know, Henry, I grew up in Singapore, so Southeast Asia meant something to me. As I always tell my friends, you can take me out of Singapore, but you cannot take Singapore out of me. As you know, as you have mentioned earlier, that January 1st of this year, something incredible has happened, and that's called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. And RCEP primarily is run and driven by the ASEAN 10 nations, with China, of course, being a very, very important component. And the other thing that has happened within ASEAN is that the high-speed rail between Kunming and Vientiane of Laos has been completed. This is the first time for a poor Southeast Asian nation like Laos suddenly jump from almost no train to high-speed rail within 5 years. This is going to extend, of course, beyond just Vientiane, because very soon it will go to Bangkok, and from there it will go into Malaysia, and Malaysia into Singapore. And so the relationship between ASEAN and China is going to transform rather significantly, if not spectacularly, in the coming 5 to 10 years. How do you see this has an impact on the Belt and Road Initiative vis-a-vis Southeast Asia's playing this important role?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Professor Fong. Actually, I see this enormous progress. As you rightly said, January 1st, we have this RCEP is actually becoming effective. The largest free trade agreement in the world, and Asia is really taking a new shape and a new direction, because that really symbolized the rise of the Asian as one of the, probably the future of the 21st century of the world center, because that's where all the gravity will come. That's where all the economy will be focused. Asia will become the largest economy in foreseeable future, not that too distant. I mean, we can see that happen. It's already almost 40, 50% of the global economy. It will certainly become 60, 70% probably as time goes on. So what I see this China and ASEAN cooperation, not only that, but also this RCEP has actually made a free trade agreement between China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, because they all connected through RCEP of some kind of a free trade agreement. So this is really significant. But also more than that, China is really leading country now in terms of the infrastructure. For example, China has 2/3 of global speed railway. I mean, the total length of that is equal to the next 10 countries combined, whereas U.S. military budget is equal to the next 10 countries combined. You see, China is busy building economic alliance, RCEP, applying joint CPTPP, also applying for DPA, a digital agreement of some kind, and also, Belt and Road. Why see maybe, like U.S. is building up AUKUS, and then, Quad or Indo-Pacific Security Alliance. So you see, actually, there's a lot of difference there. But what I see is very significant of this China building first the railway between Kunming and Laos, because that is really, it's the first time China has the railway connecting with ASEAN countries. That can connect to Thailand, can to Burma, and then to many other, Myanmar, many other ASEAN countries, even to Singapore, Malaysia. So that really a huge symbol star. I have a talk with David Lambton just not too long ago. He wrote a book, Iron River. He described that as a railway as an Iron River. So I think that is going to become a supply lines, a pipeline for China and ASEAN connecting each other. So I think it's very significant, and I think that also shows how the future that whether U.S. or EU and China, the developing countries, they really need infrastructure, and that's where the boom and prosperity comes from for the next half a century if we really work towards that. So I think Belt and Road is really needs to be further enhanced. We probably could multilateralize Belt and Road. AIIB could become a part of that. World Bank could be part of that. Asian Development Bank could be part of that. And let's really work together. I mean, BI, B3W, EU Gateway, we should combine. So for the benefit of developing countries. And I think this China Laos Railway service is a good example.
Very good. Professor Zhu?
Yes, okay. So I have a question about Russia. As U.S. relations with both China and Russia continue to deteriorate, China-Russia relations have significantly deepened recently. In particular, President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin have established sort of close personal bond. Now, how do you view Russia's role in great power politics today? And what does the future hold for China, Russia, and U.S. trilateral relationship?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Zhu, for this question. I think, China and Russia, I mean, historically, they have many problems. They have a lot of dispute, and they have a lot of, also have a quite different culture as well. But somehow they are now share something in common. They are all actually pressed or squeezed or opposed by Western countries, or forced, by for example, the Russia has an issue of this Ukraine and this NATO expansion to the Russian neighboring countries, and China has this problem of the U.S. have a security pact with Taiwan, and then actually getting closer to the Chinese mainland on those all those geopolitical hot spot. So I think they share that. Actually, they share the same concerns. China and Russia of this, U.S. or Western countries expansion into their own territory or their own neighborhood. So I think that's something that really made them together too, because they felt, for example, what has happened Kazakhstan just recently shows another again. There's always some foreign interference somehow. So I think for that reason, of course, they probably has to unite to really counter off this common strength from both ends, right? But on the other hand, I think also China and Russia are getting better is because China has also economically, Russia this year has done so well in terms of trade with China, vice versa. There's a trade increase, there's an energy increase, there's natural gas supply, there's many economic benefit also. And also, I think now China, after just celebrate centennial and all those years. I mean, Russia also, on the other hand, it was when the old days, when China actually learned many things from Russia, and during the founding of the People's Republic, 150 key project was aided by Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, to help China to build the first generation of its infrastructure capacity in China. So there's a lot of good feeling there too. So I mean, even though they have a dispute in the late 1960s, territorial dispute, but somehow, I think with the common heritage, they share a lot of similarity, but also more importantly, I think most importantly, is that they share the common threat from both ends. Similar situation, their neighborhood has been entreated by other countries. So that's really the thing. So they forced to work together, and also Russia and China, if they really work together, they can be also quite significant, opposition to any threat that they may face. So it's actually mutually assured of safety. I would say that. Also, furthermore, you have this Shanghai Cooperation as well, and Russia and China and many others, Asian country, Central Asian, South Asian country are all in it, and there's a strong tie and bond there as well.
Yeah, this is to talk about Russia and China is a great segue into the question that's on my mind, and that is China and India. Quite recently, Russia had worked with India to agree that India will also participate in the Olympics. Although I don't know how many people that actually will come from India as a sportsman, but India has said that we are coming to the Olympics. The relationship between China and India is always an intriguing one, if not a questionable one. India is the second largest in population in the world. If you add China and India together, they're almost 40% of humanity. And throughout history, China and India never had any conflict until 1962. And that conflict, by comparison to all the wars we have in the Second World War and so on, is relatively small. Some people might even call it a skirmish. But somehow, from 1962 onwards until today, India and China somehow have difficulty coming together to work for humanity's sake. After all, they are 40% of humans' population. One of the things that always surprises me is that even though India is just next to China with 1.3 billion people, the number of Chinese universities that actually spend having real interest in studying India's ways and means and histories and so on is very few. And I also know that among India, with 1.3 billion people, the number of people that actually speak Chinese is measured in the thousands. So essentially that's zero. How do you see India and China progress onwards. I think this is quite important, no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you, Professor, on that point. So Professor Feng, actually, you raised a very good question. What I think actually, both India and China are great civilizations. They're really great countries. They're the two largest, most populous countries in the world. And as you said, the two countries combined account 40%, even more than 40% of the global population. And so I think the relationship between China and India goes back a long way. I mean, the first sea turtle, I mean, returnees, you go Haigui. I mean, that's from Xinjiang, going to to India, right? I mean, so we have that, and also Buddhism was actually, we have a hugely influence from India on that too. So I think there's many reasons for the two countries actually to work together. I've been, before the pandemic, I've been to India almost every year, and I saw the transformation going on in India, and how China and India can work together. Because, for example, you talk about urbanization, environment, elevation of poverty, and all those infrastructure, transportation, all things that China has gone through can be really beautifully reproduced in India. It's a huge opportunity in the market for 1.3 or even 1.4 billion people there. And I saw Chinese company like Xiaomi, went there for 3 years, become the largest mobile phone seller, accounts about 50% of the market. Enormous opportunity. There's hundreds of apps of internet company working in India. And so it's really unfortunate to see the situation deteriorate and gone sour in the last few years. We from time to time, we see the border disputes and things like that. But I'm glad to see President Modi announced that India is going to join the Olympic and not going to boycott Olympic. I hope that we can go back to the days when Modi visited Wuhan, in China. They had a really great visit, and President Xi visited India. So really, I hope these two big countries that can really work together. I think India always traditionally they pursue a non-alliance movement. They are the leaders for that, and they actually not joining any big camps. So I hope that even though for the Quad, I mean, Indian ambassador told me that is more economic, purpose rather than military purpose. So I hope that is true, and I mean, China and India can really work together, and let's not really, occupied by those border disputes. Let's be all cool down. Let's all separate from that area. Let's concentrate on peaceful cooperation. Maybe that's the way to go. I really see there's enormous opportunity for both China and India.
Great.
Great. So you mentioned India as a leader in the non-alignment movement, and I wonder, because so many countries are stuck, in the competition between China and the United States, they found themselves between a rock and a hard place. And some countries apparently have decided to, follow the U.S. leadership in taking a more confrontation approach towards China. Let's say Australia, perhaps, in Canada, and others such as Singapore, Israel, South Korea, seem to be trying to maintain good relations with both powers. So I just wonder, because many more other countries are facing the same dilemma, So what should they do? What are in their best interests, as the U.S.-China competition continues to intensify, and perhaps do you think they can perhaps do some mediation between China and the United States? What can these other countries do, basically? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Professor Zhu. Thank you. And what I think actually we're living a really completed era, quite different era now than last century when Cold War was happening. There's the Soviet Union camps, East Bloc countries, and then there's Warsaw Pact, and there's NATO Pact, and then the economy is not that intertwined, and we don't really need each other. We only need the gunpowder probably at that time. So nowadays it's totally different. China is the largest nation, a trading nation with 130 countries. And China has signed a Belt and Road Agreement with almost 100 countries and another 50 international organizations. So China has been, for example, just had this forecast with African, more than 50 states heads of African, that China is pledging another billion vaccine, including 400 million produced locally for African countries. China is, committed to many developing projects there. China has forgiven many loans and many debt, forgiven many debt on that. So, I mean, also we just see ASEAN countries too. ASEAN, China has built this fabulous railway between China and Laos. So I think, nowadays it's not that, okay, we are ideologically, we are sided with the US, but then economically we are sided with China. So what really what really turns the world around? I mean, it's economy, it's the real benefit. So I think it's totally different from the last century in the Soviet Union era, that where countries can only survive if you have to team up with one camp or another. But now, basically they all team up. They can really economic benefit. China will be the largest economy in the world. The attraction of China will only goes up as days go by. So I don't really worry about that, because in the end, when so many developing countries, ASEAN countries or neighboring countries see the benefit of working with China, they'll stay with China. If they feel China has no threat, and there's no China never colonized any place, China never sent troops to occupy any countries, there's no military base stationed outside China, why they worry about China? So I think that even on the South China Sea, China can really solve that between China and the ASEAN countries with South China Code of Conduct and joint exploitation, joint development. So I think if there's no foreign interference, US used to say we don't take sides on the South China Sea. Now they are not only taking sides, they are actually the main confronter now in the South China Sea. It's totally different now. So I think if countries all see the benefit of working with China, I don't think they'll really pick a side or try to side with US or whatever. I think they will probably. I think the economic common sense will prevail.
There is a generally in the West, when it talks about the Belt and Road Initiative, quite often the term it's called debt trap, that China, essentially China is using this to set up that trap. Quite recently, there is a very, very extensive article written by Professor Braudingen in the Atlanta, which says that this concept that the West is proposing is really a myth. What do you think of that? Because a lot of people, certainly in the Western media, you still hear this quite a bit. How does China think about this issue?
You see, that's really the disadvantage China has, because China doesn't speak English. The 90% of the prominent media in the world is in English, and also dominated by the Western countries. And so talk about the debt trap. I mean, I don't know how many reporters has really gone up to see that the different countries. For example, I mean, all those good stories, they probably hasn't really reported much. I think there used to be a Rodian group, in the U.S., Rodian Consulting. They published their investment in the U.S. and China. They actually done a study on the so-called debt trap, and I kind of remember, they actually come up. They studied the 40% of the project of China in the Belt and Road countries. There's very few on that trap, but there are probably some 20% of the debt issues, but most of that was forgiven, and China already out of that. And then there's also maybe a few rescheduling of the debt payment. You know, you're talking about real debt issue. There's a very, very tiny percentage. So I think that really confirms what you has just said of the another professor, which had it's really a myth, you know, if not a bias. So I think, you know, it's really largely actually quite good for many countries. There are many presidents of the country, African countries, spoke out on the benefit of China. I've been talking to the ambassadors here in Beijing quite a lot. For example, last year we held a big roundtable CCG with 64 African Union ambassadors. I mean, they are talking about the African Union Free Trade Agreement, how they can work with China. And I haven't heard any African ambassador complain to me about the so-called debt trap. So this is really a myth that we really need to, you know, find out, actually, try to get that myth out of the scene. I mean, that's not really true. There could, of course, I'm not saying Belt and Road is perfect. I'm sure there could be problem. There could be here and there some, but it was not intended. It was not deliberate. That was really, you know, largely, you know, beneficial to all those countries that are having this kind of a project.
Yes.
I think
okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think this label, you know, debt trap diplomacy, has a lot to do with how China's diplomacy or foreign policy in general is perceived outside China, which leads me to another question for you, Henry. You know, that is China's international image. You know, we all know that you know, China's international image is very mixed. You know, generally speaking, in developing countries, you mentioned Africa, you know, Latin America, you know, Southeast Asia, probably China's image is mostly positive. But in the developed world, in the West, China's image is pretty negative. You know, I just wonder, you know, why is that? You know, and how can China do a better job in improving its international image, especially in the West, and you know, perhaps change people's perception of China's policies?
Yeah, thank you, Zuqing. I think you also asked a very good question. You're right. China's relations with developing countries are really great. I mean, last month we had 4 Pacific Alliance ambassadors from Latin American countries come to CCG in this office. You know, we had ambassador from you know, Colombia, from Chile, from Peru, and also from Mexico. You know, 3 of them are CPTPP member countries. They, you know, they all felt now their larger trading partner is China, except Mexico. But all those are really getting Brazil as largest trading partner with China too. So you see, China does have a very good image with Central Asia, with Latin American, African, ASEAN. ASEAN became the largest trading partner with China last year too. I think the problem with even with Western countries, you know, China is the largest trading partner of EU as well. I think fundamentally there is an issue of value. Actually, I think that probably, you know, if it really boils down, it's the value issue, because you know, that's why we have this President Biden called for this democracy summit, but basically he's picking all the countries that he determines whether it's democratic or not. But you see, the democracy concept is, even though it's coming out of Athens, you know, of Greece over 2,000 years ago, that is really a concept has been gradually evolving. And now we are with modern technology, with all the contemporary changing of the time. So I think democracy has to be upgraded as well. For example, in old days, when the mountain is high, the king or emperor is far away, very autocratic, you know, you need the people to vote to throw him out. But now, you know, with the modern technology, with the media watching, social media, everybody, you know, so, and also all the feasibility study, think tanks, and I mean, leaders in a contemporary world is really knows what's going on, and also with the system that they're not very few times they make bad decisions. They make all the good decisions because of the supporting system, decision-making system supporting them. So I think democracy concept has to change somewhat. does this one man, one vote really solve all the problem? For example, in the US, when you have a vote, I mean, everybody come out to vote, but after you got voted, then all the promises are broken, and all the bipartisan fight comes again. So, I mean, that's not really what we had to see the January 6th of last year. It's really a good example of that. So it's really divided, and also every several years, whenever there's a government elected, is always voted down the previous government policies. But I think in China, for example, they have come out with the experiment of this system with thousands of years of history, that this meritocracy. For example, there's 10 million people goes to exams every year for applying to university, 50 million people, and quite a few million people apply for public servant. It's kind of a selection and election too. So I mean, if you don't have that talent, you won't be able to serve as a public servant. And also all the officials in China, you have to serve from, county level, from city level, provincial to the top. You have to really work your way through with your performance. I mean, so they have its own logic and system. I think that's the problem, is because the Western countries have its own system, China and has its own system. So they felt, this system probably is no good. Like Fukuyama-san just said almost 30 years ago, when the Cold War finished, it's the end of the history, but it's not. So I think that's where Western suspicious, dissatisfaction, even probably dislike and even some resentment comes from, because you have a different system, and yet this system has done so well. I mean, whatever measurement you can measure on the social benefit of the people, on the infrastructure building, on the fast growth economy that the world hasn't seen in any other countries, on such a magnitude of such 1.4 billion people. And yet China is thriving so fast, and now Beijing is the only city to host 2 Olympics. So I think also, of course, China doesn't, it's not an English-speaking country, can't explain too well in the international scene. There's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of jealousy, maybe there's some misunderstanding going on. So I think this is going to take a long time for countries to really understand each other. Of course, Western countries, US has many advantages. For example, US is a talent tracking country. Most talents goes to the United States. Even during the pandemic, there's 200,000 Chinese students went to the United States. I just read something of the Science Council of the US. 80% of a PhD student from China wants to stay in the US. It's really, China become a talent supply country to the US because of its innovation and attractiveness. So I think there's many things that we can work together. I mean, rather than we really view each other down as a totally different system, because after all, I think we should probably learn from each other. And then also we can have a multipolar world. We should let different systems try. We should really measure by KPI. China is China style of democracy. We have a whole process of democracy, consultative democracy, meritocracy, market democracy, and also, of course, technology democracy. I mean, it's all combined. I mean, whereas US has its own system too. So we all need to improve. We all need to work together.
Thank you, Henry. I totally agree. I think, there's no one-size-that-fits-all solution to our problems in the world today. And I think the key here is to continue our dialogue and communication to better understand each other. I think all these countries should approach each other with a sense of humility, understanding that maybe other countries have done a better job in certain ways. We should not, approach each other in this condescending way and try to preach others what to do. I totally agree with you. We are kind of running out of time, and I know it's getting late, but I also really appreciate you staying with us for so late. And I think the relationship between China and the United States is so important, so consequential, that the narrative about this relationship should not be just dominated by hawks. So different voices, rational opinions, like yours, definitely should be heard more frequently and more widely. So I appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to engage with you. I don't know the time, but maybe we have a few minutes for just picking up some questions from the chat room. Dasha, how about that?
Yes, I think we have a person who wants to ask a question. His name is Max Liu. Max, go ahead. You can unmute yourself. Okay.
Thanks, Dasha. Thanks, Dasha. And Dr. Wang, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Can you hear me, Dasha?
Also explain who you are.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, first of all, thanks, Dr. Wang, for giving us the opportunity to chat with you and to hear our insights. This is Max Liu. I came from a Bloomberg New Economy, which is, I think you came to our forum, I think in Beijing and probably also in Singapore before. And today I'm here with an interesting question that's actually, from your response earlier, I had a question. You mentioned that China, sort of the international media is dominated by companies in the West. But in your view, do you think China has the right political and social environment to have its own international media platform? And in what way do you think that will be developed? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's also a good question. I think that it's really important for China to have international news and reporters and the media as well. I mean, China is trying to develop itself. For example, China also has English media like China Daily and CGTN and things like that. But I think, what's more important, I'm very glad to see actually, after President Xi and President Biden summit, virtual summit, both countries agreed that we're going to invite more journalists coming to each other. I think that's really important. We need to welcome more international journalists come to China, to Beijing. And for example, this time at the Winter Olympic, we welcome more international journalists come to China, even though they have to be sealed in terms of current type of a situation. But basically, I really hope there will be more Chinese journalists going abroad. There's more foreign journalists coming to China, so that's really can promote understanding. What I'm saying just now in terms of the English media, for example, all those big media was dominated by Western countries. That is a fact. So China still has a long way to go. But China realized the importance of its international media and the social media. So I think we probably should find a way to work together. But at least we should open the restrictions on the journalists to travel to both countries and give them multiple entry visas, let them have more relaxed terms, so that we can really have a better story on both sides. So I really hope so. So I hope that answer your question.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? You can raise your hand from the raise hand button. Well, if not, I think I may have enough time to ask one more question. There's no doubt that what was discussed in the last couple of years between US and China is the concept of decoupling. Decoupling, I think, either is not possible or, if possible, very, very dangerous for the world. What is China's view about decoupling between East and the West? We hear often the views from the West, but I would like to hear how the Chinese feel about the possibility of decoupling.
Yeah, thank you, Dasha, for your question. First of all, I think the decoupling really is an old concept. Probably during the Soviet Union era, the Cold War really that made the U.S. and the Soviet Union decouple each other, at least economically, and so that's why the Soviet Union was so backward in economy and eventually collapsed out of that. But now, with the globalization, we are really intertwined so much. For example, for the last 4 decades, all the U.S. companies come to China. We have 70,000 U.S. companies set up in China. And then they generate about $700 billion US dollar revenues in China. And now you see all the Fortune 500 of the US company are operating in China. And during the national holiday last year, I just went to the Universal Studio that just newly opened in Beijing, was flooded and packed with the tourists in China. So you see, that's the largest Universal Studio out of the 5 Universal Studios in the world. And but furthermore, I think that it's impossible to decouple. For example, this US now is keep sanction China. You know, the first the sanction of Huawei, and then there's ZTE and many other companies. Now the total number of companies they put on the entity list of their sanctions is over 600 now in China, from China. And yet China hasn't actually sanctioned any countries from any companies from US. You know, as far as I can remember, I haven't seen anyone yet. China, even though published this new regulation on foreign entity list sanction, but they haven't really practiced that yet. So you see, you know, how the US is doing a lot of damage to its not only to the Chinese economy, but also to the US economy. For example, the sanction on the computer chips, on the semiconductor sector, you know, created a crisis for the chips. There's a shortage of chips, and there's a several million cars less produced in the world because of this shortage of the computer chips that can be used for the automobiles, and also even telephones too, mobile as well. So what I think is now, how can you do that? For example, I just had 2 nights ago, I had a conversation dialogue with Ed Fuller, the founder of Heritage Foundation, and also Terry Bernstein, the former US ambassador to China. I mean, Terry Bernstein told me, you know, the land, actually they had a record number of agricultural sales to China last year. And so the agricultural land becomes more expensive now actually to acquire in the middle, in Iowa, in those places. So I think that, you know, agriculturally, China has many deserts, mountain areas. US has a lot of fertile land. They can supply a lot of agricultural food products to China. Technology company, Apple makes 90 to 95% of its Apple computers and phone calls, everything in China. Right. Qualcomm sells 60% of this, you know, products in China, revenue in China. Intel sells 60% in China. So how can they decouple? I mean, you know, they were hurting themselves. So I think this kind of a reorientation process, adjustment period, will take a few years. But gradually, I mean, like US-China Business Council, American Chamber of Commerce, they have done surveys again and again, and most American company wants to stay in China, wants to expand in China, wants to invest in China. Nobody wants to return back. So how can you decouple on that? So it's impossible. And also there's a people-to-people exchanges. I was told by the Charge d'Affaires of the US embassy here in Beijing that they told me they issued almost over 200,000 visas for the Chinese students to go to the United States during the pandemic last year. So how can you decouple? So I think, you know, we are totally in a different intertwined era, and you know, why, you know, I mean, so if you're hurting China, you are hurting yourself too. So, and vice versa. So I think that it makes no sense, and to do that. So my advice would be, you know, we have a lot of differences. We are getting into a new phase of the relation, a new realistic approach towards the bilateral relation. There will be adjustment on both sides. Like I was talking to Joseph Nye, he was saying maybe by 2035 now people come to realize, you know, we have to sit down and work together and peacefully coexist. You know, like Graham Allison was saying, China and the US is a twin. You cannot separate. And also if you know, if we really do damage to one the other, we also suffer as well. So my feeling is that we probably get in the competition, you know, cooperative and the competition era, you know, that but let's have a peaceful competition. That's Olympic style competition. So I think the motto for Olympics this year, Winter Olympic, they have added the, you know, from 3 words to 4 words now. faster, higher, stronger, together, so we can't separate, we have to be together.
Professor Zhu, would you like to come up with the summary of today?
Well, yeah, I mean, unless there's another question from the audience, but otherwise, I think this will bring to the end of our forum today. And I think we can't thank you enough, Henry, for joining us and providing such insightful, fruitful thought. And we wish you and the CCG continued success in the future. And we hope to do this again, maybe in the future. And I also want to thank our audience members who have stayed here online till the end. Thank you for your support for our program. That's all from me. Thank you very much, and enjoy the weekend, Henry, and happy Chinese New Year.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zhu and Professor Feng. Thank you all very much.